Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Hubbardston Finance Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via Zoom. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website a comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. So we have here our acting town administrator, David Nixon. We have
good evening.
We have members of the finance committee, Peter Russell, Josh Lerner, Chuck Reed, and Maria Tarigny has just joined us.
Hello.
Perfect timing. And our first item on our agenda is to hear from Dr. Sheila Muir. Thank you for joining us, and we are all ears to hear what you have to tell us.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm just wondering if, I think Cheryl Duval is also in attendance. I don't know if you can see her. She's sending me a text saying she thinks she's in the meeting, but she can't see anyone. So I'm not sure whether she's actually has the correct link or not. Is there anyone who can?
I don't see her in here. The only one that it's under is Rick Jones, which is the only attendee currently that's an attendee. So I'll keep an eye out, but currently she's not in here.
All right.
The link is on our website, so she can find it that way. Hopefully she didn't see the Friday one because they are different. Links are different.
That's very possible because we ended up having both in our calendars. So it's possible she followed, but I'll tell her the link is on the website, or she can get it from my calendar because I got it from mine. So just, if you would just bear with me 1 second,
oh, sure.
I will try to text her. Okay, hopefully she will join us shortly. The first part of the presentation really is mine anyway. So by the time we get into the financial aspect, Cheryl, I think Cheryl will be with us, and if she's not, I'll do my best to walk us through it. So I'm hoping that I could just spend a little bit of time. We are thankfully attending meetings of finance committees in all of our member communities in the next couple of weeks. And we met recently with Barry, and we developed just a slight presentation to kind of give you an overview. If it would be okay that I could share my screen, I could share that with you.
Sure.
Okay, let me see. I think I have to be enabled to share my screen.
Lori, are you
I'm working on that now. Give me one second.
Thank you. No worries.
So it's going to make you a host is what it's going to do. I don't know if you've had a meeting before, so you'll just have to change it back over to me after you're done sharing your screen. So I just have controls of it.
Absolutely.
So let me change you over right now. The other thing is under participants. Let me see if I can make you a co-host. No, it might make you a host. So just keep an eye out for Cheryl in the attendees. Okay.
Okay, perfect. I will do so. All right, I think I can. I'm not sure when I share my screen if I'm going to be able to see the participants, but I'll do my best. And she'll probably text me.
Cheryl is in here now.
Perfect.
So if you click down at the bottom, it will show participants. You'll click on Cheryl and you'll change her to a panelist.
Okay. Oh, I see. All right.
Yeah.
This is new to me. I'm not used to the.
Yeah, it won't allow me to do a co-host, which it normally does. So that's why, but we'll get through it.
All right. I think we're there. Okay. And she's here. Perfect. All right. I will share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So I just thought, again, Cheryl and I put this presentation together for all of the finance committees for the 5 communities, and we thought the best way to approach it was maybe to just give you an overview of our budget priorities and where we were, where we are now in our budget process, and then Cheryl will talk more about the specifics of the assessments, as well as our plan for using our additional federal funding that we hope will be a priority for sustainability and over multiple years, not just the years of post-pandemic. So I think when we probably last interacted in focusing on the FY21 budget, we were in a new reality, as you certainly were, in thinking about how do you provide for what your community needs during this pandemic. And we were in the process of thinking about how do we plan for an unknown future. Ultimately, what ended up happening was, because of the pandemic, we needed to add several positions to the district in order to provide the remote, hybrid, and in-person learning opportunities that we have been able to provide all year long for our students, and all of the costs associated with the health and safety protocols, purchasing numerous pieces of personal protective equipment, working on testing, physical distancing, cleaning and disinfecting. That caused us to increase staff positions. We had additional custodial time in order to make sure that we had regular cleaning and disinfecting going on in all of our buildings. In fact, we're still disinfecting high-touch surfaces twice a day in all buildings. The physical distancing required us, as you know, I'm sure, to spread students among over several classroom spaces where they would typically be clustered in one classroom space. Additional spacing for lunch, for feeding students, and additional staffing for our what we call the medical waiting room. So students or staff who are exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19 needed to be isolated until they could safely leave school, and we had to staff those medical waiting rooms. So we added a few custodians and a few certified nursing assistants that we did not anticipate initially as we developed our FY21 budget. We also purchased a great deal of technology. Some of that was in part due to the contributions that all of our member towns made, sharing some of their CARES Act money with us. And we're so very grateful for that. We're able to purchase new Chromebooks, true Chromebooks for all of our elementary students and our elementary staff members, which made a tremendous difference in the quality of the equipment that the students and staff are using to get through the pandemic. Additionally, we continue to purchase PPE. Lots of that was provided for in grants, and later in the presentation, Cheryl has a slide that kind of outlines how we spent some of our grant money up to this point. Health and safety supplies and equipment we purchased air cleaners, and we were donated from the Department of Education, I think 57 air purifiers as well. And we had to purchase some furniture in order just to make enough space for the students to exist at the 6 foot and now closer than 6 foot distancing. So the reality for Quabbin in terms of planning for last year was we really didn't know what we were planning for. And to some degree, we're in that same situation now, as crazy as that might sound. It would be nice if we could say, we're planning for school and for everything to be back to normal, but I think we all know that that remains to be seen. We certainly hope that we're as close to what typical and normal school used to be, but it's very possible that we will still have many restrictions in place in order to keep everyone healthy and safe as we move forward. And we're not exactly sure what that will look like, but we have a much better idea of what that will look like now than we did when we started planning our budget back in December. So we do expect that school will be conducted in a much more traditional manner in 2022. However, what we also know that student needs will be greater and more diverse than ever. We've had many students learning in multiple different modes of learning, and they've had varying degrees of success. And so once we get them all back with us, and many of them are back with us now, we'll be able to fully assess what their needs are. But we do know that the social and emotional and behavioral needs that students will have, we're already seeing it, are more challenging than we ever had previous to the pandemic, and the academic needs are more diverse as well. So what we weren't able to do some things in FY21 that we had done previously. For example, our instructional coaches, our intervention specialists, were not able to perform their roles. We needed them to perform the role of a classroom teacher this year. And so the vast majority of our instructional coaches and our intervention specialists took the role of classroom teacher. Many of them taught as remote teachers for the entire school year. Our planning at this point is to return those staff to previous roles. We do not believe that we'll be allowed to offer 100% remote learning in the next school year. The Commissioner of Education has made that pretty clear, and unless there's a change in that decision, we won't be offering 100% remote learning in the next school year. Those staff will return to their previous roles. We will eliminate some positions as we learn more about the health and safety, cleaning protocols, physical distancing, the need for medical waiting rooms. Some of that additional staff that we hired will likely be eliminated because we will need other things more. And we will add some positions, and we will add the positions in the following areas. And those positions I've outlined, as you can see in the slide. We've outlined the connection between those positions and our strategic objectives that are outlined in our strategic plan. As I mentioned previously, we have a lot more technology in the hands of our students and in the hands of our educators. It's wonderful to have that technology, but we have a responsibility to use that technology responsibly and effectively. And we have all learned to use technology in different ways and more effectively as we become familiar with it, but there's still a lot more that we can do. And one of the things that we want to make sure is that we're supporting that effective use of technology, and that we don't sort of go back to our old ways. We need to think about what worked with use of technology and what ways can we continue to use technology to enhance student learning outcomes. We also need to increase academic support in middle school. And although I, mentioned that our student needs are going to be greater and more diverse than ever, we have a structure in place at our elementary schools to address that. It's going to be challenging for sure, but we have intervention specialists. We have tutors already in place. Those are existing programs that we had prior to the pandemic. We weren't able to implement those during the pandemic because we had different needs, but we will have those staff positions and the structures. We have never had an intervention academic support program in the middle school that was a structured system, and we've proposed it for many years. We have not been able to, it has not survived the budget process for many years, but this year it is absolutely essential. Without the additional academic supports and actually some additional social and emotional supports all through the district, our students are not going to be successful. So we really need to add that program at this point. We also, as I mentioned, the social, emotional, and behavioral support is top priority. We have not had enough staff positions up to now, but now we have much greater needs than we've ever had before. And I'll get into the specifics of that in just a moment. Our strategic plan objective number 1, Quab and Pride, talks about making sure that we are sharing with the communities, with our parents, and with our staff and our students information about what's happening in our school district, and celebrating the accomplishments of our students, accomplishments of our staff, and building that capacity to be proud of the Quab and education that we provide. And we've gotten feedback from parents and in parent surveys that we could do a better job with communication. And so there is a new position, a part-time position in our proposal this year, not in the budget, but in a grant fund, a school choice revolving account position for a family and community engagement position, again, part-time for the district. And our commitment to the community, and I'll speak a little bit about this, but if you're familiar with our strategic plan, one of our 4 overarching objectives is commitment to understanding and working with the community, with all of our communities, to ensure that we're supporting the goals of the community, and the community that we continue to work together to benefit both the school district and the community. And so we've made some budgetary decisions that we think address our commitment to the community, and you'll learn more about that as we go through the remaining slides. Please stop me at any time if you have questions or comments. I'm just going to continue because I know I don't want to take too much of your time. I mentioned the technology previously, and what we are proposing are 2 technology integration specialists. These are like technology coaches, if you will. We have never had these positions in our district. Many districts do have these positions. Again, something that we've identified for several years, but have not been able to make happen. And we really do feel as though if we had a technology coach for our teachers and a technology coach for our elementary, secondary, and elementary, that we will increase the effective use of technology and continue to grow our capacity to support student learning outcomes. Right now, one of the ways we're doing this is we're hiring outside consultants to consult with our teachers. We've been working on a 2-year project with the Highlander Institute for professional learning related to blended and personalized learning. We believe that, and some of that is being paid for by grants. We believe that with the addition of the technology specialists, we can reduce our dependence on outside consultants and build our own district capacity to do this work, so that we're not hiring consultants, because the consultants are great and they provide a wonderful baseline for us, but they don't they're not on the ground every single day in our district. And so their influence is limited. And so there's certainly a place for using them, but we think that this will allow us to, again, reduce our dependence on those folks. This is where the most significant changes in our staffing patterns will be seen in the upcoming school year is our social, emotional, behavior, and academic needs of students. You see, we have a list here of some new positions that we are proposing in the budget. Right now, we have one board certified behavior analyst in the district for the entire district. This person is not able to meet all the needs that we have currently. And again, we really do expect that next year our supports for students in the area of behavior will grow significantly. So we would like to add an additional board certified behavior analyst and 2 behavior assistants. And the behavior assistants will work under the direction of the board certified behavior analyst and support students in the classroom as teachers learn to support those students with behavior challenges. So what typically happens is when a student has a behavior challenge, a significant behavior challenge, a team of people, including the classroom teacher, board certified behavior analysts, principals, others who work in that with those groups of students, develop a plan for the student to reinforce positive behavior. And that plan needs to be managed. We need to collect data on whether the plan is working so we know whether the plan needs to change or not. And the behavior assistants will provide some of that coaching for the teachers so that the plans can be implemented effectively over time. In elementary social worker, we have one social worker, again, for the district. She spends most of her time addressing the needs of middle, high school students and families. We have needed an elementary social worker for many years. Again, pandemic has exacerbated the need. We have many families who are struggling, and a social worker will can help support students, but can also help support the students' families so that the families have access to supports that they need outside of the school district, and ultimately will improve the students' ability to access our curriculum. Preschool in every elementary school. Currently, we have 2 preschools. Both of them, because of the pandemic, are now located in OCAM, and we have noticed that has caused a decline in enrollment, particularly for Hubbardston families. I'm sure that the location has been very challenging for Hubbardston families because of the distance between Hubbardston and OCAM. And so our goal is to have a preschool classroom in Hubbardston Center School, as well as each of our elementary schools. So that will be an addition of 2 preschools. Currently we have 2, and we will be adding 2 additional preschools. Intervention programming at the middle school, I spoke about that a few moments ago. That will be a position that will be a couple of positions. One will be an intervention specialist type person, a reading specialist, who will oversee the program and support teachers, but also work with students. And we have 3 tutors who we hired because of the pandemic, some of those positions that I mentioned initially to support the remote classrooms. We will be reassigning those tutors to work in the intervention program at the middle school. We will have a middle school, high school literacy coach. Right now we have a math coach at the high school and have had for probably 4 years. We need to add a literacy coach. The literacy coach will also work in conjunction with that intervention program because initially it will be focused on literacy. We will restore the middle school therapeutic classroom. Again, because of the pandemic, one of the things that we weren't able to do was hold on to our middle school therapeutic classroom and our high school therapeutic classroom. For 1 year, we merged the two classrooms, and we need to have an additional therapeutic classroom, go back to the previous model where we had a therapeutic classroom to support students with significant social emotional needs at the middle school level, as well as at the high school level. So there'll be an added position there. This last bullet really isn't an additional position, but it's a decision that we made to, in a sense, avoid additional positions. So we have talked for the better part of several weeks about whether we should keep the grade 6 students at the middle school. You may remember we moved the grade 6 students to the middle school for 1 year to free up space in the elementary schools because of the pandemic and the social distancing needs that we had. But we've decided to keep the grade 6 at the middle school for 1 additional year. By doing this, it allows us to save 2 classroom teaching positions. If we were to take those 6th grade students and move them all back to their home elementary schools, we would need to add 2 to 3 teachers, classroom teachers, to keep class size manageable. Because they're all together and we can mix them up, we will need fewer teachers. And so that saves us some positions that will allow us hopefully to fund the additional needed positions that we have. And again, this is connected to that commitment to community, using our resources effectively, financial resources, but also our personnel resources, our human resources, we believe is obviously our responsibility. And this will also have another impact that I think is important to point out. We're keeping our elementary intervention program staffing the same, and we're removing the 6th grade students from the elementary classroom, from the elementary schools for this year. That will increase the student to staff ratio, staff to student ratio, excuse me, in our elementary special education and intervention programs. So in a sense, it's increasing our capacity at the elementary level to support these social, emotional, behavior, and academic needs that will exist there. The middle school grade 6 decision is not a permanent decision. It's just an additional 1 year, and we will study that more thoroughly for a permanent decision about where 6th grade will be long-term in the district as we go through the next school year. I mentioned the Family and Community Engagement Coordinator. This should say 0.5. It's a 0.5 position at this point in our proposal. We will fund that out of our school choice revolving account because we believe that it's an appropriate position to attribute to that account. Again, because it's part of it's part of making sure that people are aware of what Quabbin has to offer and how it benefits. We think it benefits our communities, but also certainly benefits our students. And again, the strategic objective of commitment to the community is highlighted on this screen also. We do have some just additional positions that are necessary because of enrollment. We have a computer science teacher position that has always existed in our district. This year, we didn't fill that position because we couldn't find a computer science teacher, honestly. So it wasn't in our FY21 budget. We had teachers teach over schedule to fill the need that we have for students to take computer science courses, but we really truly do need a computer science teacher again at the high school level. We do need a high school humanities teacher, and again, this is due to enrollment shifts as we make some changes on our required courses at the high school. And we know that we need an additional elementary classroom teacher. What we don't know is exactly where that classroom teacher will end up. We actually are on the cusp of class size in 2 classrooms in Oakham Center School, And so it will either be a grade 1 position or a grade 5 position in OCAM. We're just watching those numbers really carefully, and we will place that new position wherever the greater need is. And I'm gonna end my portion of the presentation by just making sure that I emphasize that as we look at the additional funding that is available to, that will be available to the school district in terms of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds through the federal stimulus packages, our goal is to build capacity in the school district to provide for unique and diverse needs of students, and not to overly rely on outside resources to build our capacity. And so the new positions, we believe, will allow us to do more internally and less externally. And we also want to create sustainability. We have a plan that, again, Cheryl will speak to, that to manage those additional funding sources over a multi-year, over multiple years, to be sure that we don't hit a funding cliff at the end of FY24, FY25, that results in huge spikes in our budget or huge spikes in town assessments. So I hope that that you will can appreciate our thought process around this. We are truly committed to working with our communities. We know that that our budget and finance, our finance committees, as well as our all of our municipal leaders, have to balance the competing needs, and we strongly believe that having strong communities makes our school district stronger. And we also believe that having a strong school district makes our community stronger. And so working together as best we can to make sure that as much as we can, we're sensitive to your needs and you're sensitive to our needs is our continued goal. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to go to the next slide, and I think Cheryl can chime in.
Good evening, everybody. So this is a graphic that we put together so we would keep a handle on where we are with our, what we call COVID-19 grants. These grants seem to be a process where the government keeps throwing money at us with very strict deadlines and very strict guidelines as to what they can be used for. For example, the first grant that we received was the Remote Learning Tech Grant, which actually came to us probably around July or August, but you were able to use expenses that were back in FY20. So this is the funding that we used to purchase Chromebooks and laptops for students and teachers, that in conjunction with the funding that all of our towns gave us was able to let our, allow our remote learning program to move forward very quickly. Actually, the next grant we got was the one in green, the Coronavirus Relief Fund School Reopening Grant. Those grants came along to help schools do what they needed to do in order to get school open. And not even if you didn't even open school on time, which we did, still districts and towns got this grant. So the majority of that funding went for PPE, whether it be hand sanitizers or hand sanitizing freestanding machines, or masks and gloves and gowns for the nurses and some staff, and face shields, all that kind of stuff, alcohol to be used on the technology. And so that has been expended in full, as well as the Remote Learning Tech Grant. The Rural School Aid Grant, that's actually, the first one is actually FY20's grant that we had plans for, but did not do the project once we were told we had a whole year that we could roll that grant forward. So we decided at the time, rather than put a generator in the central office, we would hold on to that funding to see what was coming down the pike. Actually, the FY21 rural school aid money, we did not even find out what our allocation was until the middle of this March. And they did not extend that deadline. So we had the allocation in March. We got the money in half the money in a few weeks later, but we have to have it spent by June 30th of this year. So what we decided to do using both of those two grants is to fund two major projects at the middle high school that were actually in the budget for FY22. That would be replacing the cooling tower that works with our HVAC system, which is expected to be about $120,000 when all of the electrical bids come in as well. And the fire panel project that runs our smoke alarms, all of our lighting, and those electrical types of things that run that system. In addition, we spent some money on air cleaners. The superintendent did mention that we got air purifiers at no cost from DESE. Those are very small, used for small spaces, offices, or in classrooms where there's one-on-one, perhaps a speech therapist working with a student. Those came very quickly at first, and we put them right into place. And then we spent some money on air cleaners, which allowed us to put in larger areas and where the testing for our air quality and our air exchanges did not come back as high as we would like. We put those machines in there. So those two rural school aid grants have not been expended in full, but they have been encumbered with a very little balance remaining. We then received the coronavirus prevention grant, and what we use that for, I neglected to say, the superintendent mentioned that we hired a few positions due to COVID. For example, 6 custodians that were hired for additional cleaning throughout the district, and 3 CNAs that were in the medical waiting rooms. We paid for those positions out of the coronavirus school reopening grant, but we could only book their salaries off until December 30th, 2020. When we received the coronavirus prevention grant, we took their salaries again and posted to that grant rather than the budget. So that grant has been expended in full as well. Our ESSER 1 funding came in, and now I'm blanking on what exactly we used it for, but that has been expended in full. I'm sure I'll remember later on. What we chose to do as we started building FY22, however, was to not use ESSER 2 funds. ESSER 1 funding was the funding source for the CNAs and the custodians, not the school reopening grant. So ESSER 2, although it's available for use now, and it goes out until September of 2023, we have not used it all, and we will be using that to fund many of the positions and programs that the superintendent talked about tonight. All of the social emotional programs that we're putting into place, the preschool program, the reading intervention program at the middle school will not be put into the budget, but by using those ESSER 2 funds. We have not got a plan for all of that money at this point, without knowing exactly what we'll be hiring staff for. There is a little play in there that we may have a little bit remaining after we hire everyone. The ESSER 2 grant is also available for expenditure right now, but we are using that money in future years. That grant actually goes out to September of 2024. Our hope is these dotted lines is to spend at the end of a fiscal year and not go into the next year into September. That just makes difficulty with hiring staff and paying for staffing. So we hope to use this amount of money, the 1.6 million, for FY23 and 24 to, again, build capacity. Hopefully we won't need all of those positions in the social emotional programs that the superintendent talked about, but we believe that we will be able to maintain some and let go of some that we no longer need when we're talking about fiscal 24 or fiscal 25. You can move ahead, please. Our plan for the use of district reserves in planning our budgets is to reduce our reliance on E&D. We are planning in FY22 to continue to use $427,000. 10,000 of that for the last 4 years now has been restricted to a deposit into the OPEB trust fund. The remaining $417,000 has been used to really offset assessments, an additional revenue source, so that the maximum doesn't fall to member town assessments. We're hoping to, at this point, we have about $519,000 in E&D using 427. There's not a whole heck of a lot left there at this point, but our hope is to start to build E&D a little at a time, but focus more on the use of that money for one-time purposes of capital investment, because that fund does not grow very fast. Our school choice revolving account is an account that we always use the current year's revenues in the following fiscal year. So we always have a cushion there if anything were to happen. And we're planning to strategically use those school choice revolving monies to manage by managing the enrollments in all grades to maximize revenue while minimizing the cost impact, so that we have funds available out there in fiscal 25 and 26 when there's no longer any federal funding that has really been subsidizing our budget. And when it does that, it reduces assessments to member towns. So we're trying to look at this as a 4 to 5 to 6 year plan rather than looking at 1 year at a time with this additional federal funding that we have been receiving. Please move ahead.
Oh, apologize.
We also, as you are aware of the American Rescue Plan Act, and that's federal aid directly to cities and towns. It's like a $1.9 billion plan where there's money going to several different places, but this is the aid that is expected to go to our Quabbin communities. We have heard from a couple of our communities that they were unaware of this. That's why we decided to put it into the screen here. So according to the documents that I have received from the Mass Municipal Association, as well as the Department of Revenue, Hubbardston's looking at 1.4 million. I tried to Google so I would know more about what this money can be used for, but I was very unsuccessful in finding out, one, when it is accessible, two, when it's ending, and three, what the acceptable uses are for this money. So looking specifically at FY22, which is now based on the House cherry sheet that was released, our Chapter 78 is not going up very greatly, $57,000, less than a 0.5% increase in Chapter 78. Transportation reimbursement is going up for the most reason because we had a new contract for FY21. And now that our end of year report is, so our expenditures are known for FY20, our revenue stream will increase significantly because of the increase in our transportation contract. Charter school reimbursement on the House Ways and Means budget went considerably down, but so did our expenditures. And you would be able to see that in our budget. So that's not a great loss because the expense also went down. So in total, we're looking at about $197,000 in additional state aid, or 1.12% increase. The district revenues and reserves to support our budget are being level funded to the last several years. We have at this point removed the use of ESSER II funding by our member communities to reduce assessments because the House of Representatives took that out of their budget. We are expecting that the Senate will also do the same. And I think that came about because of the fact that the Federal American Rescue Plan had been enacted between the time when Governor Baker put out his budget and the House put out their budget. So our district state revenues and state aid and district revenues in reserve are going up by that same $196,007,000, but drops to a 1.09% increase because district reserves are remaining level funded. So here are the assessments based on the budget that the school committee approved at the end of April. The budget is up 1.7%. The amounts for each of our member towns are listed there. If we go right to Hubbardston, it is a $169,717 increase, or 3.48% increase. looking at the 1.7% increase in the budget, we're hoping that our member towns will be able to meet these assessments by hopefully using their federal aid money as we are to balance our budget. But that is where we are at this point in time. The greatest shock was to Hardwick this year, where they received not only an increase in their required local contribution, but they had a huge increase in student enrollment, which is the other part of the formula. So actually they went up a whole 1 percentage point in enrollment when 3 of our towns saw a decrease in enrollment. So that was unexpected this year. I think that's all I have, Dr. Muir. Yes. So if there are questions, we certainly can answer them. I do have my binder here that I hope to have all the answers.
I don't have any questions, but I thank you for the presentation. It's very, very interesting, and I must congratulate you on what you've been able to achieve during this past year and your thoughtfulness in moving forward and addressing the social and emotional needs of the students, which I'm sure are considerable.
That is true.
Thank you. Thank you. We're happy to, again, answer any questions that you have. And if there aren't any questions, as you move forward in your process, we're happy to, again, connect with any one of you or attend a future meeting if that would be helpful. You know, again, we're hoping that our plan moves forward as we have set it out, and that we aren't met with any unexpected roadblocks. But if we are, we will make adjustments as necessary and work within our means to provide for what students need as best we can. So if you don't have anything else for us, we will exit the meeting. So, but I know I need to turn.
Yeah, if you click on Ryan's name at the bottom, Sheila, it will say like make host again. So if you can just switch it over to me.
I think I've done so.
Okay, yes, you did. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. All right. Now, if our open space folks are still with us, I'd like to reorganize our agenda to allow them to make their presentation to us.
I just moved over Rick Jones.
Rick Jones, okay. Welcome, Rick.
Hi, thank you, Susan. Hang on here. I'm just clicking the buttons here.
Okay.
Here we are. Good. Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Jones. I'm a member of the Open Space Committee, and with me here is Susan Worth, also a member. And we appreciate Susan, you letting us spend just a few minutes to tell you about the Fieldstone Farm project that we've been working on.
Absolutely.
I don't know how many of you have heard of it through the grapevine or through some of the stuff that's been on the town website and some of the social media in town. So I guess what I'd like to do is just briefly give you a quick overview of what Fieldstone Farm is and talk about the high points or highlights of the the land and why we think it's important to support the conservation of it. And then if there are any questions, after that, we'd be glad to answer them.
Great.
Susan, I don't know if you had a chance to send around any of the information I sent over to the other committee members, but basically what I'm just going to do is give a fairly quick overview so that I don't take too much of everybody's time.
That'll be great.
Okay. Fieldstone Farm is a 245-acre tract of land that's on Lombard Road in the northeast corner of Hubbardston. It has been a family farm for the Smith family for at least 4 generations that I know of, possibly longer. And it came up for sale approximately 3 years ago. And they had been unable to sell it. And through our relationship with the East Quabbin Land Trust, we learned of the potential for sale of this land. East Quabbin Land Trust was aware of it because of their development of the Henry's Grove land, which is also on Lombard Road and abuts this Fieldstone Farm. They came to us and asked if Hubbardston might be interested in partnering with them to try to conserve this land. And we said we were interested. Then there was a protracted negotiation with the family members. I think there were 3 of them that we were involved with, and it took a while, but at the end of last year, we finally, East Quabbin Land Trust finally reached an agreement with them to purchase the entire tract of land. They also, East Quabbin Land Trust also brought in the DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, to participate in it. So we've basically been working with those 2 organizations to find a way to conserve this land. The reason we want to conserve it is it's been identified by the state as a critical natural landscape and wildlife habitat with critical forest for rare species. It's a priority habitat, has been named by the state as a priority habitat for rare species. It has prime agricultural soil, and it also abuts the Ware River, the east branch of the Ware River, and the west side of the property is part of that watershed. So the importance of the land and the reason we want to try to conserve it if we can is in addition to the values that I just mentioned, the habitat for rare species, the watershed, and the conservation of the forest. It also abuts several other conservation areas and protected lands in that corner of Hubbardston. There's close by, of course, there's Mount Wachusett, which is managed by the state. There's the Audubon property that is also abuts it, and there's a Crashes property that is managed by the North County Land Trust, and then Henry's Grove, which I mentioned. So between Princeton and Westminster and Hubbardston, there is a corridor of conserved land that extends all the way from Mount Wachusett all the way through to past the Fieldstone Farm and into some other DCR property. And the farm also abuts the Pinecrest development over on that side of town, and their private property that that they maintain for the residents there. The property, what we're trying to accomplish with this is to conserve the property. To do that, we need to put a conservation restriction on it. And the conservation restriction is something that has value, just like the land itself does. And that's what we've been asked to do in partnership with the DCR and East Quabbin Land Trust. The value of the conservation restriction is roughly $375,000. DCR is actually contributing $425,000 towards that. And we've been asked to provide a $75,000 of CPA funds towards that conservation restriction. In addition, East Quabbin Land Trust is soliciting private donations from foundations that they've worked with in the past for other projects, as well as private donations. The west side of the property and the west side of Lombard Road will be actually owned by DCR. So as such, it won't require a conservation restriction, but the east side would require a conservation restriction to protect it from development and preserve its conservation values for the public benefit, which includes its scenic qualities, its natural resources, and the natural habitat. That's an overview of the farm itself. There's a warrant article, number 16, that'll be on the town warrant here on June 1st. We've been asking folks in town to consider the information on Fieldstone Farm and approve the use of the $75,000 of CPA funds to help fund that conservation restriction. That $75,000 is already set aside in the CPA funds, so no additional taxes are going to be required and no debt would be incurred. So in effect, it would have no impact on the town budget. Excuse me. That's pretty much the overview that I wanted to present to you folks and just give you an update on what was going on with it. Because it does require that we provide some funds for that conservation restriction. So if there's, does anybody have any questions?
I'd like to just add, Susan Worth here on the CPC and on the Open Space Committee. And I just look at it as such a wonderful opportunity because the Open Space Committee couldn't do this on our own. It wouldn't fly. But partnering with the DCR and East Quabbin Land Trust for a relatively small $75,000 investment, which is already paid for, which Rick pointed out, we get significant conservation effort for the future. And I just am very excited about it. I hope people see the value. If they reflect their voting in the survey as to the survey, I would say it should hopefully get approved. Also, if anybody's interested in seeing the land, we have a hike planned for May 22nd at 1 o'clock, and it's just out on Lombard Road. Rain date is the 23rd. So, any questions or comments, anybody?
I have some questions because I can't claim a whole lot of familiarity with the process. So who takes title to the property? Does the Quabbin Land Trust own the property when all is said and done?
Yes, they actually, because the Smith family wanted to get the deal done and move on quickly, we had a limited amount of time to close the deal with them. So the East Quabbin Land Trust pre-acquired the land. The total value of the land is $650,000. That was the appraisal, and that was as low as they'd go. As I said, the DCR is going to be contributing $425,000. Part of that is for their ownership of the west side of Lombard Road. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, so the point that so East Quabbin Land Trust will be contributing $50,000 of that total price to maintain ownership of the land. And by the way, the DCR would be holding the conservation restriction, but the East Quabbin Land Trust, which is a certified state land trust, would be responsible for holding up the requirements of that conservation restriction, maintaining the trails and maintaining the property. So they're assuming the cost of doing that. So there really is no added maintenance that's required from the town of Hubbardston yet. Rather than Hubbardston spending $650,000 to buy the land outright, we get all the benefits of it, the recreation use of it, the conserved area as part of Hubbardston, which, as Susan mentioned, is the folks in Hubbardston on our town survey a few months ago said was very important.
Right. What buildings are on the property?
There are no buildings. It's mostly forested land. There are two old agricultural fields. Just looking at those fields, they haven't been farmed in some time and were probably used for grazing. There's quite a bit of, as there isn't much of Hubbardston, a lot of rocks. So they probably use it for grazing. There's some beautiful stone walls. It's really a beautiful piece of property.
Wow.
So if folks have a chance to come out on May 22nd and take a walk, we're not going to hike the whole property, the whole 245 acres, but there's a nice 1 mile walk that we can take up to the agricultural fields and along some of the trails. There are existing trails on the property now, and the long-term plan for the property would be to make those trails usable. A lot of them are already usable, and possibly connect them with other trails in the area, including the Mid-State Trail, which runs right through through Mount Wachusett Reservation, through the Audubon land, through some of the other conserved lands there, and also through the DCR land that abuts Fieldstone Farm. So there's an opportunity here to create a really nice recreational area in addition to conserving that corridor of forest and habitat for the wildlife there.
One of the questions that's come up is, will Hubbardston have input on the CR? And that's a definite yes. Also, I understand the Economic Development Committee, I think it's a committee, they're looking into ecotourism, and this dovetails beautifully with that. If we could develop, well, I hate to use the word develop, but publicize, let people know there's more good hiking out there that's easy to access. And so that's another thing to consider.
Hi, this is Maria. I have a question. The land trust already owns the property. Is that true?
They pre-acquired it, yes.
What does pre-acquire mean?
Well, they had to make a deal, or the Smith family would move on, or not sell it. It had been on the market for about 3 years, and they had been unable to sell it. So they were hot to trot, so to speak. So what they did was they used their line of credit. They don't have, East Quabbin Land Trust does not have they don't sit on a pile of cash. Most of their assets are in land, and they do have endowments that can only be used for certain purposes. So they basically borrowed the money to close the deal, the $650,000, of which the DCR chipped in $225,000 of that purchase price. So what they need to do, though, is they can't afford to carry 300 and whatever the difference was, $375,000, $400,000 mortgage, if you will, on the land. So they would be, that's where DCR comes in. They will provide money to purchase the conservation restriction on that land and in effect reimburse East Quabbin Land Trust for all but $50,000.
Okay, what you had said originally, I thought they had like purchased it already, and I didn't understand our part, but now I understand it better. Thank you.
Well, they have, Maria. They have actually purchased the land, but they borrowed money to do it just to get the deal done. And they are, in addition to DCR money, looking to private foundations and individuals for donations to fund the rest of the conservation restrictions so that they can recapture the money they spent to purchase it in the first place.
Okay, thanks. I understand that better now. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, this is Peter Russell. I have a question as well. Can someone elaborate about the CPA funding that's been already set aside, and how did that occur?
Oh, okay, I can address that. The Open Space Committee, well, actually, we've been working on this. Stephanie Friend, who's also on the Open Space Committee, and myself, we approached CPA back January 2020 and said, this looks like a really good thing we should consider. So it's not like it just got sprung on us. We've been thinking about it, and East Quabbin was looking for some affirmation for us to put some skin in the game, because it just seems appropriate. If we put a relatively small investment in and we have access to it, it makes sense, 245 acres. And so it simmered for a year, and then it was presented formally, and there was money in the budget. It met the criteria, so it flew. The committee voted it in. We took 25 from the Open Space Committee, Open Space Reserve account, and 50 from the undesignated reserve. So there's no debt incurred. It doesn't increase taxes. I know that's a big worry for people. So does that answer your question? It went through the ropes of the CPA. It met the criteria.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. My question, okay, I guess it continues though. If we weren't to support this and the town meeting doesn't support it, but the 75,000 that we're talking about would remain in the CPA's coffers for some future project, I take it?
Yes, it would.
That's correct. The town hasn't, the town hasn't used CPA funds since 2012 for any open space. So we feel that Hubbardston's going to get the benefit of having this additional recreation area with the use of funds that are already set aside for
it. Is anyone?
I like it. Sounds good.
Yeah, my questions are not intended to derail this. I'm just not familiar with the CPA resource. Is anyone aware of the total amount of funding that resides in the CPA account at this point that the 75 will be coming from?
It's so interesting you should ask that question because I can give you the short spiel, and then we'd have to go to Kelly to get the current numbers. The CPA can fund all of our current articles with monies they already have. But here's the deal. There are 6 articles, and some of these monies are coming from 3 different sources of CPA. 25 from open space, 20,000 from housing, and the rest of them, i.e. the library debt, the library interior, the library exterior, and the $50 for Fieldstone Farm, because remember 25 came from open space, 50,000 comes from undesignated reserves. That's 119,458. Then you have, once that's done, and once we vote in the appropriations for fiscal year 2022, with the 4 buckets, meaning open space, history, housing, undesignated reserve, it will be 230,575. That's a ballpark. I mean, I don't have the exact. And encumbered is 181. So that would be a total of 412,175, but obviously the encumbered is already allocated and set aside. So yes, we can afford it. When you look at the debt, I realize those 3 years, there's overlap between the playground and finishing off the library, but we can do it. And maybe some of it could come from the historic bucket, probably for the library debt, I'm thinking, but we are able to do it. And also maybe that'll give us some time to sit back, let things accrue again, and maybe do some larger things for housing, which honestly has been the stepchild of all of our endeavors. But finally, we have a habitat in the works. So I think that's pretty cool. Habitat for Humanity on Ragged Hill, I think it is. Does that help explain? Actually, what's a good way? Could we send him some literature on CPA?
Sure.
Yeah, we can give you a little synopsis and send it to you, Peter. Is your email available?
There is.
Okay, is it?
Through the town clerk's office.
It is.
Oh, okay.
And I would ask if you would send it to all of us. You can send it to me, and I will circulate it. One of the challenges that I've had and I've reached out. Oh, certainly not last year because nothing happened last year. But in prior years to CPA to try to get some visibility into what you folks are up to, because every year at warrant time, FinCom is asked to recommend approval of various CPA articles. And because we don't have any visibility into what you're doing, we've taken the position in prior years of offering no recommendation one way or the other because we just don't know. So we would love to have some more direct involvement with you so that we understand the types of projects you have in the hopper, and so that we can work together and be more supportive, perhaps.
Well, that absolutely makes sense. That's one of our objectives for tonight. And in full disclosure, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's great. Please continue.
Okay. When I joined Open Space Committee, I said, oh, well, who keeps track of the money here? Well, you know, we just do it through the town offices, and there had been change of personnel and accounting, this, that, and the other. And so I said, well, maybe it'd be a good idea if one of our members, you're not really a treasurer. You don't have any hands-on, but you become more of a, I don't want to use detective, that sounds negative. You become a tracker. So I volunteered for the job, and somebody said, oh, we don't really need it. And I said, no, I think we do. So let's go ahead and get the open space figured out, which we're lucky enough to get hay money in the Hubbardston Preservation Account. Mm-hmm. And so there's some good things happening there in open space. And then I joined CPC, and I said, I think maybe we need to look into the details here with chronology. And I've kind of made it a mission. It's not complete, and compared to open space, it's a lot more complicated, but I'm making progress. And like I said to Kelly, our town accountant, I said, I'm not trying to do a gotcha. I just want it to be right, want it to be transparent. And if we keep up to date on it, it's much easier than thinking back to 2 years back. And I'll just give a quick example. The thing that made it these requests so much easier is that out of the blue, we had a $35,000 surplus from a past church roof project, and then a $38,000 surplus from undesignated reserves for the library roof. That was like $75,000 out of the blue. So it gave us a cushion. But I mean, that's a little, how do I explain this? It was a wonderful surprise, but I'm sure glad it was coming in rather than, oh, you owe $75,000. Right. So I think because CPA is kind of complicated, in some ways it's very simple, but I'll send you a narrative because I'm not an accountant. And so I'm coming at it like Josephine Joe Citizen. And I think Joe Citizen should be able to understand it. Does that make sense?
No, that sounds great. That'll be
okay.
You can do that. And then my last question on the subject would be, what would the consequences be if this article did not pass, aside from the egg on Hubbardston's face as a result? It would not sink this transaction, would it? I mean,
yes, it would. We wouldn't be able. East Quabbin Land Trust would not be able to come up with the funds to get the conservation restriction on it. And without the conservation restriction, they wouldn't be able to be reimbursed for their money that they put into it just to get the deal done, and would end up probably getting sold off for development.
So they don't think they could come up with the extra 75 from another source? if Hubbardston doesn't come through?
No, the foundations that they deal with are typically, they'll provide something in the order of $10,000 or $5,000. She's been soliciting donations from those foundations now for the last couple of months. I think we did get one for $10,000, but she's looking for about $120,000 in those private donations. Mm-hmm. So the result would be that they'd have to sell the land back, and there really aren't a lot of lots available for to be developed there. There are wetlands there. There's not access to a lot of the property.
A cul-de-sac wouldn't work there. Developers, no.
And no developers haven't really been interested in it here for the last 3 years. It's been on the market, which is why the Smith family was eager to get the deal done with East Quabbin Land Trust and DCR.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Just one question. How was the turnout to the hike the week before last?
We had, I think we had 11 people. We had some folks from Pinecrest and a couple of people from the local, from Lombard Road or Old Westminster Road who lived there and walked there on the road. And they were all very, very positive about it because there really isn't any other than going to the Audubon property or going over to Mount Wachusett. On that side of town, there really isn't a whole lot of opportunity for hiking. The trails, the only trails really close by are on the Pinecrest property. So, we have Mount Jefferson and Malone Road over here on our side of town where Susan and I live, but we thought this was a great opportunity to provide an area that would be open for folks to hike, to hunt, to ride their horses, on the east side of town.
So come out to the hike on May 22. Please, we'd love to have you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There are trails on New Westminster Road by the Clark Cemetery. All up into the Jocelyn Brook area.
What was the name of the brook?
Jocelyn Brook, which flows into Cunningham and then eventually goes into the Ware River too.
It's a beautiful walk. Put it on your calendar if you can. You go up to the top and there's this meadow. It's lovely. And it's not strenuous, it's doable. I was even thinking of doing the senior walk. I'm going to talk with Claudia and just see. We'll see. I don't know if that will work out.
Well, it sounds great. It sounds like a worthy project. Thanks for joining us and the explanation. And hopefully May 22 will be a lot nicer than May 4th was. And because today wouldn't have been much of a day for a hike, but hopefully by then it'll be much more amenable.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening. And if you have any other questions, the information that I sent along to Susan has my phone number as well as Bob Hatch's phone number. Bob is the chair of the Open Space Committee. So if you have any other questions that come up, please get a hold of us.
We will. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All righty. Our next agenda item, David, you're on. Do you have a report for us?
Okay, so the town of Hubbardston is doing fine in terms of its revenues and expenses. Through the month of March, I should be getting the April numbers in any day now, which I'll share with you. We would expect to have brought in about 75% of our revenue as of the end of March, we were at 80%. So that's a healthy margin. And we're right on target for our expenditures at about 75% for the end of March.
Great.
So good news, and we have a budget, which I can talk about now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the budget that I've presented is basically the same as the balanced budget that Ryan McLean presented to the select board back on March 15th. I've made some minor changes. First is the library offset of about $9,500 was not properly accounted for as an expense. So I made that adjustment, and that was offset by an increase in new growth of about the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
We anticipated late FY22, we're going to have an interest payment on the school roof project of about $6,000. So I made a change to the tax revenue of $6,000 and the additional $6,000 expense in the debt line. So that's an offset.
Mm-hmm.
State aid has been updated to reflect the most recent numbers from the House Ways and Means Committee. The state budget is now in the Senate. The net increase for the town of Hubbardston was about $1,300. We have to factor in the financial impact of the police reform law that was just signed into being. This has increased training requirements for police personnel, particularly part-timers. The chief was originally requesting an additional $20,000 to his budget. He and I talked about how we might be able to stagger this over a course of several fiscal years. And so his request is for $4,000 increase. So I added that to the budget. I just want to make sure that you understand that this is the recommendation I'm making after Brian's budget presentation.
Right.
And then the Quabbin and Massachusetts assessments, I used the assessment numbers rather than Ryan's estimates, and that has decreased our cost by about $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we have a balance, positive balance of $5,648. That includes the $4,000 increase to the police budget for the police reform law requirements.
Okay. Well, that sounds good.
Brian did an excellent job with the budget. I'm impressed that he's been able to eliminate the use of one-time monies for the operational budget. There's no free cash being spent on the operational budget.
Mm-hmm.
He's incorporated best management practices in everything that he has presented to the folks. And I'll have this in front of the select board for a final vote on May 10th.
Okay, great.
Are there any questions?
I don't have any questions. I don't have any questions on the budget itself. Will you send us, because I think that the last one I had from you that I circulated is April 29th. So now you've got something more recent than that?
April 29th is the most recent budget.
It is the most recent budget. Okay. All right. Does it include the $4,000 and change for the
Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay, great. All right. Then we're current. Good.
On that file, it shows the operating surplus of $8,100, not the.
Do you have the one from April 29th?
Yeah, the one that's 4/29/21. Yeah.
Are you on the tab that says the revenue expenditure summary?
Oh no, I was on I was on the front.
Yeah, so the front one is not the most recent. If you go to the revenue expenditure summary tab, it's about 5 tabs in from the left. Thank you for catching that. I'll make that correction.
So this police reform training, does the state give money for that training, or that has to be paid for by the town?
It has to be paid for by the town.
Okay, David, did you have a chance to talk to the other towns about their reaction to the new Quabbin assessments?
Yes, I did. Hardwick is going to have a very hard time with it. Barry, Oakham, and Westminster, is it? Yeah, Westminster. They are on board. New Braintree. I'm sorry.
Braintree.
I'm getting my intermunicipal agreements mixed up in my head. New Braintree. They're okay with the assessment as amended by the school committee.
Okay, so it's just poor Hardwick as usual is having a hard time.
I'm sorry for them.
Okay.
I think we're meeting again on Friday night. Would you like to think about the budget and have a recommendation that I can publish on the 10th?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay. Would it be helpful if I went through the warrant articles?
It would.
All right. Articles 1 through 7 are on the consent agenda. These are standard articles, or they are tidying up articles. Article 3 is the first money articles for Chapter 90. We get $365,000 annually from the state for roads and bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Article 4 is to allow us to expend without going to town meeting again for any educational grants. Number 5 is to continue our transfer of money with the Holden Hospital settlement. And we'll be using about $11,000 from that account later on in the capital.
Right.
Article 6 is to delete the revolving fund for the wiring, since this is a service is now handled by an intermunicipal agreement. This is in line with Ryan's tidying up of stray accounts.
Yes.
And Article 7 is just a statement of the spending limits on the existing revolving accounts. It's required by law.
Those didn't change, right? Those are what they were for fiscal year 21.
I'll double check that, but that's my impression.
Okay.
Articles 8 through 11 are the omnibus budget. So if you approve the budget, you've approved those four articles.
Right.
Article 12, this is money from cable companies to continue the operations of the Cable Advisory Committee, $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
No impact on taxes. 13 is the capital plan that Ryan presented on March 15th, and that's fully funded with $182,000 of free cash and $11,000 from the Holden Hospital Fund.
Mm-hmm.
Article 14 is a surprise capital request from the City of Gardner for animal control services. And the City of Gardner bought 2 trucks for animal control purposes. And according to the intermunicipal agreement that we have, we are on the hook for about 11% of that cost. So that's $8,115, which we can pay for out of free cash. I've sent this off to the Capital Planning Committee and to get their input. It's a contractual relationship. Not sure what we can do about it.
Well, yeah, other than going to their meetings and babysitting some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So that we know, rather than just getting an invoice.
I'm overdue to call the mayor of Gardner, and just say, listen, you know, can you give us a 5-year plan?
Right. Good. Okay. Excellent.
All right. Articles 15 through 20 are the CPA articles. The first one is for Habitat for Humanity for a single-family house, Ragged Hill Road, $20,000. Article 16 is $21,458 for the library roof debt service, and we have another 2 payments to make on that, and then that will be retired. Article 17 is the presentation that we just had for $75,000 for the Fieldstone Farm property. Article 18 is required by law. It sets aside $4,250 for the CPA committee for their administrative costs, and then apportions, according to law, funds into the various buckets that CPA funds. So that's historic resources, community housing, open space, and the undesignated reserve. There's no impact on taxes for any of this.
Right.
19 is $28,000 for the library interior renovations. And Article 20 is $20,000 for the exterior renovations of the library. Article 21 is associated with the 3rd phase of the Route 68 rehabilitation project.
Right.
We have to gain easements, very small easements from the abutters for the affected properties. And Ryan has suggested that we have free cash to the tune of $15,000 to fund those easements.
Okay.
And he's hoping that there are a lot of people just make the donation of a foot or 2 of land.
Right.
Article 22 is to put $15,000 of free cash into the general stabilization account. That will add to the account that's currently there. I'll give you the balance in a moment. Importantly, that leaves about $92,000 of free cash uncommitted, which is his goal to roll over from one year to the next. Currently, there's $426,623 in the general stabilization, so that 15 would add to that.
Okay.
And is that the last one?
Well, then you got something for the park.
Yeah.
Hours to the park commission.
This has been a puzzle, this Article 23, and it's very likely to go away because the request that we've been requested to segregate monies from Keep Hubbardston Clean, which amounts to about $350, segregated from the Park Commission revolving fund, which has a spending cap of $10,000 as of July 1st of every year. It does not appear that we have any way to segregate this from a municipal accounting perspective. So I think this article is probably going to be deferred at best, or probably dropped entirely.
Okay. Yep. And then we'll be treated to the planning board's presentation on this last warrant article.
Right. So the rate of development is they're just adding another year before the sunset on that.
Yeah.
And then the sign bylaw is something that apparently they were trying to do at the fall town meeting, but wasn't ready for prime time.
Right. I remember that. All right. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The CPA committee, I'm going to do some research now, but it's usual for a finance committee member to be a member of the CPA.
Well, that's one of the things I want to talk to the CPC about.
I am on, yeah, I'm on it.
Oh, you're on it, okay.
Well, you're oh yeah, you're on capital planning. Oh, I thought you were talking about our community preservation friends.
Oh, sorry.
Which one? Yeah. Which one are you talking about, David?
CPA, the Community Preservation Act.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mistake.
No, that's all right. You're gonna be next, Chuck.
Too many alphabet soups out there.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, well, that's why I'm glad they reached out to us. I had reached out to the group, I think probably before Susan was on it, and I got nowhere. So it's nice when they need something from us. That opens the door to a nice little conversation. If I just wait long enough, everybody shows up.
I am strongly leaning towards researching this and preparing an article for the fall town meeting that would change the membership of the committee to include a member of the finance committee, because there's a lot of money involved and there's a lot of restrictions on the use of that money, but it can be applied to help the community out in interesting and innovative ways.
Right.
And if the finance committee is not on board, that's going to be an obstacle.
That's right. That's right. Okay, great. That will be excellent. Let's do that. And in the meantime, I'll be reaching out to them and see if maybe they'd like to join us periodically at our meetings and kind of tell us what they're up to.
I feel like we had talked about this a year or two ago about sort of like auditing their account or something. I mean,
right.
You know, have some oversight of their account or whatever it is. I think we talked about that a year or two ago.
Right, exactly. Let's yeah, that's going to be the goal, although it sounds like things are a little loose over there right now, but that's okay. I guess Kelly, the accountant, is keeping track of things, and Susan is just getting up to speed. So perhaps we can all do that together and get some comfort as to what's going on.
I think by law they're required to do a summary of their activities every 10 years. I don't know when Hubbardston adopted CPA, but we must be close to that time at this point.
Yeah,
that's a formal report of, or what have they expended, for what purpose, and you know, how do they account for their just basically it tightens the whole thing up.
Well, exactly, because they get, I forget what the percentage is of the receipts that go into CPA. I mean, they should have a pile of money there.
About 75 grand per year.
Okay. I bet Dan Galante knows the answer. How long the CPA has been around.
I can look at the last elections and see, or the approvals for town meetings and stuff, and see when they were started, and let you guys know.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have any further questions for David?
I have none. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
None. Thank you, David. Chuck, how about at last a report on the capital improvements planning committee? How have those meetings been going?
They were going really well. We've made a couple recommendations. Really the theme of our recommendation is kind of on safety. A set of extra turnout gear for the firefighters who show up regular, because there's certain, that there are requirements for their gear to get cleaned, and they don't have any facilities on site to do that. So they have to send it out. And so that would mean they don't have gear if they should get called up while it's being cleaned. Although I did have found out, I think there was a post that the fire department just got a grant for some too. So we have to find out what the status of that is. Also paid for, put money towards a fan system, a ventilation system for the DPW. They did put in for a mini excavator, but that got turned down.
Okay.
And to tell you off the top of my head, I'm not sure of some of the other things, but we, stayed well within the budget. There were a few items that were asked for that we said no to. And then the next project is we've been assigned with trying to present at town meeting, because it was our recommendation that the town should look into putting up a new public safety building. Mm-hmm. And during town meeting, putting a presentation together. And we're in the process of meeting now to talk about that, looking at trying to show why we need a new building rather than trying to make do with what we have. And plus on top of that, I think I just recently heard, I'm not sure the details, that there's an issue with the second site up at the old green property. They're now looking for an alternate site to replace that one.
That's right, yeah.
Can I clarify that?
Sure.
Okay, so the 3-year contract for leasing the site from the private property exceeds $35,000, and that triggers a procurement requirement. This is something that our auditors pointed out to us. So Ryan asked me to put together a request for proposals in order to test the market to see if there's any better deal that's out there for the town. I think the fire department is more than happy to stay where they are, but if we can find another facility that will accommodate them for less money, we should at least be able to discern that and make a decision based upon the procurement. So this is a formality more than anything else, but it's an opportunity to see if there's a better place for the fire department.
Okay.
Now this is in lieu of the Breezy Acres, or whatever the name of this.
Well, Breezy Acres is where they are.
That's what we're talking about. And that rental used to be $18,000. It's now $35,000.
Over a 3-year period, it exceeds 35. You've got to look at the entire value of the real estate lease.
Oh, I see. So it's an aggregate.
Aggregate number.
Okay.
That's why it triggered the procurement.
I see.
Are there any other properties in Hubbardston where they could reasonably, like a garage for the ambulance and stuff? I mean,
I have had one person contact me to talk about the request for proposals. So I'll follow up with that person to see if they meet the requirements. And the requirements are basic common sense requirements. That there are 2 bays that are available, that there's access to a public way, that it's not close to an intersection, It's within a certain district of the center of town. Things like that. It's got running water and septic and all that.
Well, Chuck, I was on the building committee all those millions of years ago. That's how I got into all this. That's how I got into all this stuff and come to you now. And I think I still have some of those materials floating around. If you think that that might be of any use to you, if you don't already have them, I'm happy to share them with you.
Yeah, I know, because I had to meet with Chief Perrin, and he sent me a copy of the flyer from the last. Yeah. he said nothing has really changed.
Right, except construction costs.
Yes, yeah, well.
Everything else is the same.
Yeah, sticker shock.
Yep. Okay. All righty. Well, very good, thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is to review the warrant articles and talk about our provisional recommendations. I will ask my committee members if you want to do that, or if you're satisfied enough so that at our meeting on Friday we can go ahead and vote, or we can discuss them and vote on Friday. What would you like to do, given that it is 8:19 p.m.?
My preference would be to take a look at them, and then we can do the vote on Friday.
On Friday, that's my preference. What does everybody else think?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
I agree.
Okay, great. All right. Do we have any other new business? I do not have any.
No new business.
All right, I'm hearing nothing from anyone else, so I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks. Voice vote, Susan votes yes.
Chuck, yes.
Josh, yes.
Maria, yes.